Nobody's perfect, and the same's true with cars as well. Show me your best one, and I'll find something to complain about. But then there are great cars that I can complain about a lot. Hey guys, Stype here with my list of the shittiest versions of otherwise great cars. Let's go.
Number 8.
You'd think that all Jeeps have four-wheel drive, but they don't. Most models in their current lineup are SUVs, and the toughest obstacle such cars usually deal with is the curb. You don't need a 4x4 for that. But Wrangler, well, that's a different animal, designed to go wild, in the wild. Just from looking at it, you can tell this is an off-roader, and it means business. Tall ground clearance, chunky tires, good approaching angle, and of course, power, going to all wheels. And then there was a version with rear-wheel drive only. That's half of its talent gone. Imagine Mike Tyson with one arm tied behind his back, and you'll get the picture. Honestly, what were they thinking? It's simple. They wanted to sell more Wranglers. A less complex car meant that the price was lower too, and that means more people can buy their way into the Wrangler family. But why would you want to be part of that family if you can't join in on their fun extreme adventures? How does it feel to be an imposter? Have you no shame? This JK Wrangler truly was a joke. In the short 3 years that it was on offer, most people ignored it, and those who bought it either converted them to four-wheel drive or were ridiculed. Good.
Number 6.
Tesla Model S is, according to many, one of the greatest and most important cars ever made. Thanks to its big battery, it was the first truly usable fully electric car. Finally, an EV that you can drive like a normal car without constantly running out of juice. That's if you didn't go for the entry model with a 40 kilowatt-hour battery. Back then, the Model S was the only kid on the block, and it was expensive. You were looking at $80,000 for a good one, and that was problematic. Elon knew if he wanted to get his EV revolution rolling, he needed to get more people to participate in it. And so, long before the Model 3 would come out, the Model S40 was that affordable car. Except it wasn't, and it was shit. It still cost $52,500, and that was after the government's $7,500 tax credit. And for that, it was still missing features like navigation, backup camera, and most importantly, fast charging. So 130 miles of range, and every 2 hours after you run out, you need to wait 7 hours to recharge.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
But the biggest FU with it was the fact that the 40 kilowatt-hour battery is actually the same one found in the 60 kilowatt-hour model, just software limited. That means that 33% of the heaviest part is dead weight, which does nothing except for slowing you down and making that range even shorter. Honestly.
Number 5.
Few cars are as revered as the R32 Nissan Skyline GXi R. It's the original Godzilla, a computerized, all-wheel drive monster that dominated the competition, and I do mean dominated. When Nissan first entered it in the JTCC, it won every race of that season. Every race.
Dominating.
Naturally, the road version was monstrous too. Yes, it was limited to just 280 horsepower because of the Japanese gentleman's agreement, but a full 500 horsepower was easily unlocked with an ECU remap and by swapping a few restricting parts. But that's the GTR, the top version of the Skyline. Lesser versions could be had without the turbos, without the all-wheel drive, and a sedan body. And at the bottom, the absolute worst R32 Skyline ever made, the GXi. It's a sedan only, which, despite having the same wide wheel arches, same headlights, taillights, and other design cues, it simply doesn't look right. But it's not the shape or lack of all-wheel drive and turbos that hurt it the most. It's the engine. The GXi is the only one with a 4-cylinder, which makes, do you want to guess how much? 90 horsepower.
Oh, yeah!
The only thing that this limping Skyline shares with the Godzilla is the Skyline name, and frankly, it shouldn't even share that.
Number 5.
I don't really need to spend too much time telling you how great the Audi R8 is. It's a Lamborghini Gallardo. That's half the price, and yet it looks better. But did you know that there's also an electric version too called the R8 e-tron? No, it wasn't just a concept car. They made and sold these as well, but don't beat yourself up over this if this is the first time you've heard of it. Most Audi dealers didn't know about it either. It wasn't advertised, it didn't show up in the brochures, and you couldn't see it displayed for sale anywhere. So how could you buy it? If you were, for lack of a better word, an Audi connoisseur, you'd get approached by one of the select few European dealers who would then whisper in your ear that you could have an electric R8 for $1.1 million.
What?
And what do you get for this Bugatti price? 450 horsepower, 3.9 seconds to 60, and a top speed of 155. And in case you're keeping score, that's the slowest second-generation R8, but it costs 5 times more than the fastest one. What's more, because of the heavy batteries, the handling is worse, and the silent treatment from the electric motors makes it less exciting too. Even the range is shorter than you'd find in the V10 model. There is simply nothing the e-tron was better at. Nothing. It was, as the French always knew, a piece of shit.
Number 4.
I don't have a big bushy mustache, but I do like the Ferrari 308. I love that 80s wedge design with a chiseled sharp front and that convenient carrying handle at the back of the roof. It's neat. The 308 is fast, it's red, and it's a proper Ferrari. Sadly, the 208 version, which looks the same, is the furthest from being a Ferrari that a Ferrari can be. It was made exclusively for the Italian market, where at the time you had to pay 38% tax on cars with engines over 2 liters. So, to make the 308 more affordable, they took its 3-liter V8, debored it to 2.0, and called it a day. First of all, if you're calculating how much this or that will cost, you shouldn't be buying a Ferrari. These are not cars for the ordinary people. Besides, a poor man's model is ruining Ferrari's exclusivity image. Second of all, the 208 was one of the slowest Ferraris ever made. That 2-liter V8 was only producing 155 horsepower, which was less than the 2-liter V6 found in its predecessor, the Dino. And that's a car that Enzo thought was too slow to have a Ferrari name on it in the first place. So how slow was the 208 then? Well, how does 8.7 seconds to 60 and 17 seconds on a quarter mile sound to you? That's slower than this Ford Transit van. Makes you want to shave that thing off.
Number 3.
The Pagani Zonda R is the best and the worst Zonda at the same time, and it pains me to say that because I love this thing. It's just that the R is pushed so far that it became unusable. To no one's surprise, this is not a road-legal car. It also doesn't comply with any racing regulations, so it's not a race car either. And that leaves it being a track car, just for having fun. That's if you can handle it, which you probably can't. The cabin is hot and cramped. The engine is bolted onto the tub and will vibrate your teeth out of your skull. The gear changes are violent and the G-forces will squeeze your organs until you give up. Thinking that you, a mere mortal, can use this car to its fullest potential is like thinking that you can satisfy a porn star. Don't kid yourself, you can't. And then there's the loudness of it. Most racetracks have a 110 decibel noise limit, which the Zonda R breaches. So not only will this thing cause you pain and hearing loss, it will get you banned from most racetracks. When Top Gear tested it on their track, even with a muffler on, it set off noise alarms in the closest city, and the police were sent to stop the madness. So in conclusion, the R is a $2 million Zonda that you can't drive. Might as well hang it on the wall then.
Number 2.
The Jaguar E-Type is considered by many to be the most beautiful car ever made. It tops countless best-looking car lists, and even Enzo Ferrari was impressed by its swooping and majestic lines. But the thing is, when people praise the pretty Jag, they're usually talking about the coupe or the convertible, but never about the third Hemsworth brother, which is the 2+2. To make space for back seats, the cabin was extended, the roof was raised, and the swooping rear line was made bulgy. I know it's not anatomically correct, but it looks like it has a huge beer belly. The proportions between the cabin and its slim body were ruined so much that the 2+2 could honestly be called ugly. And then it got worse. The Series 2 introduced several design changes, largely due to US safety standards. Headlights didn't have the glass cover and were uglier, taillights were larger, misplaced, and again, uglier. The bigger front grille, while better at cooling the engine, was also uglier. But the final nail in the coffin was the Series 3. There was no coupe anymore. You can either have the Roadster or the ugly 2+2. The new emission standards made the straight six too weak, so V12 was introduced, and that one needed even more cooling. So what did Jag do?
He's about to do something stupid.
They just added this additional square scoop under the grille. But look how brutally it sticks out. No sensibility to the existing lines, just a sudden hole. This might be the first time you'll hear these words, but my God, that E-Type is ugly.
Number 1.
The Audi A5 is great, and so is the Cabriolet version. But a Cabriolet 4-pot diesel? What? Volkswagen's 2-liter TDI engine was famous for being frugal, but also being unrefined, rattling, and not very kind to living things. Now, which of these that I just mentioned is good choice for a sexy-looking drop top? Nothing. You put the roof down, and all you hear are the agricultural diesel noises. That's not a good sound. But you know what's worse than that? Listening to the same pitch of that rattling noise the whole time thanks to Audi's multitronic gearbox. It's just a fancy name for a continuously variable transmission, and I guess I should explain how it works. Instead of having gears, the CVT has 2 pairs of pulleys facing each other and a belt stuck between them. By moving those cones closer or further away from one another, the belt moves to a higher or lower ratio. I know my explanation sucks, but know this. The engine always turns at the same ideal revs, while the CVT is changing the ratio and making you go faster or slower. And now imagine listening to the same diesel drone, which is even more amplified. I said it's even more amplified when you put the roof down. I'd rather go deaf.
You will?
Another bad side of the CVT is that under high tension the belt can also slip, so hard acceleration is slower than with a traditional gearbox. It's just not a good fit for a sporty car. Honestly, this A5, it's the worst thing imaginable, except it actually exists. What were they smoking? And now, 3 other shitty, great cars.